Pregnant wife gets call from police your husband is at the hospital. We found him with another woman. Can you imagine getting a call that doesn't just tell you your whole world is about to shatter, but actually forces you to watch it crumble right there in your hands? Because that's exactly what happened to me when the police told me my husband was in the ER and then, almost as an afterthought, added, he wasn't alone. I was just sitting there, whispering secrets to the 8-month-old baby boy growing inside me. You know, those quiet moments you cherish before everything changes? But then my phone rang. Boston Police. My heart hammered even before I answered. Mrs. Peterson, your husband is in emergency care at Massachusetts Hospital. Please come immediately. My hand trembled so hard I almost dropped the phone. Then the officer, his voice too calm, dropped the bomb. We found him with a woman in a hotel bathroom, both unconscious. My ears went numb. A metallic taste filled my mouth. But somehow, I grabbed my keys and ran. I ran faster than I ever thought possible, like an Olympic sprinter fueled by pure, unadulterated fear. My name is Camila Peterson, 35. I'm a head of marketing used to dealing with things I can predict, charts, plans, hard data. But that Friday night, as I sat alone in our South Boston home, gently stroking my belly, the silence took me back to the 2 miscarriages I'd endured after Gabriel and I got married 8 years ago. God, those days were a blur of pain, clutching my stomach, crying until I was too weak to move. Gabriel was always busy with client events, the stockbroker life, you know? He said his industry didn't allow him time off. And I, naive and desperate for a family, told myself I had to understand. 6 years later, when I thought my heart had hardened into stone, I got pregnant again. This time it was a boy, 33 weeks along, and the doctors said everything was perfect. But that old fear, that nagging terror of being robbed of happiness again, it still haunted me. I opened TikTok just to distract myself. And then there she was, Jennifer. My Jennifer. Standing in some lavish hotel room, filming the Boston Harbor view. Quick layover in Beantown before NYFW. Her caption read, Jennifer, my best friend for 13 years. The one who flew from Detroit just to hold me after both of my losses. The one who promised she'd never leave me alone. I was about to text her, "Want to go baby shopping tomorrow?" But my fingers froze. Every time I dared to hope, fate would rip everything away. I was so afraid to feel happy too soon. I was getting a glass of water when my phone vibrated again. Boston Police Department. The same cold shiver ran down my spine. I answered. The officer's voice, even calmer this time, made my heart plummet. Mrs. Peterson, we're calling from Massachusetts General Hospital. Your husband has been brought in for emergency care due to a fall in a hotel bathroom. I was silent. He continued. He wasn't alone. We found him unconscious with a woman. My ears rang. My other hand instinctively wrapped around my belly. And then, like a lightning bolt, the image of that hotel window from Jennifer's TikTok flashed in my mind. The Boston Harbor lights, the soft blue curtains, her quick layover. No, it couldn't be. Jennifer would never. Gabriel, he might be flawed, but he wasn't that kind of man. Not with her. Not with my best friend. I threw on a coat, slipped on my shoes, and ran to the car. The Boston night wind cut into my face, but it was nothing compared to the pain already squeezing my heart. They made a mistake, I muttered, hands gripping the wheel. It's a colleague. A misunderstanding. But the image of that hotel window, Jennifer's satin pajamas she always wore when she stayed over, it all rushed back like a bad omen. As I pulled into the Mass General parking lot, my entire body trembled. Not from cold, but because I knew what waited inside might shatter 8 years of marriage, might destroy the life I'd fought so hard to rebuild after 2 devastating losses. And I had no idea that what I feared was only the beginning. The ER doors swung open, and that all-too-familiar scent of antiseptic, etched into my memory from my miscarriages, hit me. My stomach knotted. I held my belly, forcing myself to breathe, to prevent a contraction. The reception desk blurred. The squeak of doctors' shoes, the rhythmic beeping of monitors, it was a soundtrack to my deepest fears. Gabriel Peterson, I choked out, my voice cracking. My husband. I got a call. The nurse looked at her screen, then handed me a clipboard, her voice calm, too calm. It made my ears ring. Please confirm the information. I glanced down at the admission form, and in the space of a single heartbeat, my entire world collapsed. Again. The words stood clear, two names side by side, like a dagger through my chest. Patient 1, Gabriel Peterson, Boston, Massachusetts. Patient 2, Jennifer Ramirez, Detroit, Michigan. It felt like someone reached into my chest with a hand of ice and squeezed my heart. Jennifer. My best friend. Over a decade. The one who flew from Detroit to sleep beside me after I lost my child. The one who held my trembling hands as the doctor delivered the news. The one who said, I'm here. I swear, next time you'll keep the baby. My knees buckled. I gripped the counter to stay upright. Ma'am. The nurse gently touched my arm. You're pregnant. Please breathe. Her voice sounded miles away. I inhaled, but the air burned, like smoke and ash. Flashes hit me. Jennifer by my hospital bed, clutching my hands so tightly her nails left red marks. Her eyes genuinely red from crying, not that glossy mist she used for TikTok, but true, raw worry. Or so I thought. I remembered her exact words then, words that now felt like a curse. I'll be here this time. You'll keep the baby. I swear. I looked down at the form again, just to be sure. But no, there it was, the brutal truth. Gabriel and Jennifer. Admitted at the same time, same location, same accident, same hotel room. My throat clenched. My heart pounded so loud I could hear it in my ears. I gripped the paper so hard it nearly tore. I don't know how long I stood there. But in that moment, under the stark white lights of the ER, over 30 weeks pregnant, staring at the names of my husband and my best friend on an emergency form, that's when I knew my life had veered onto a path I never could have imagined. And the worst part? I still had to walk it. Clutching the crumpled form, I turned and followed the nurse. Each step felt like dragging boulders. The squeaking medical shoes, the rolling gurneys, the beeping monitors, it all blended into a chilling, sterile soundtrack. When the nurse pulled back the pale blue curtain, all warmth drained from my body. Gabriel lay there, a white brace around his neck, abrasions on his shoulder. Beside him, less than a meter away, Jennifer. Her face bruised, arms scratched, hair still dripping wet, soaking into her pillow. But what really made my stomach churn was the faint scent of luxury body wash in the air, the same brand Gabriel had given me just last week, saying, "Try this. See if it suits you." I hadn't even spoken when a night shift officer stepped forward, his voice flat, report-like. They booked room 2418 at the Liberty Hotel. Staff reported hearing glass shatter, then screams. When security forced the door open, Peterson was found unconscious on the bathroom floor. Ms. Ramirez was seated beside him, shaking. Both of them were unclothed. Water and blood covered the tiles. Unclothed. That word hit me like a bullet. I stood frozen, unsure if I was even breathing. A piercing chill gripped my spine, like someone had poured a bucket of ice over me. Jennifer stirred, her eyes still red from crying. When she saw me, she rasped, "Laura, it's not what you think." I swear. That line. It's not what you think. The classic cheater's phrase, straight out of a movie script. But coming from Jennifer, it felt like the entire hospital ceiling was collapsing over my head. I didn't even have time to respond before Gabriel groaned softly and opened his eyes. He winced, lifted his hand to his head, and the first thing he did? He didn't ask if I was okay. He turned toward Jennifer, his voice filled with worry. "Baby, are you all right?" I was standing right behind the curtain, barely 2 meters away. And he, my husband of 8 years, the man who knew how much I'd suffered losing 2 babies, only saw one woman. The one lying next to him. That moment confirmed everything I'd feared on the drive here. The truth was even worse than I'd imagined. The air in the ER felt thick, suffocating. I thought I might collapse right there. I turned away from the curtain, one hand on my belly, the other gripping the cold metal railing in the hallway to steady my shaking legs. My phone slipped in my sweat-slicked fingers as I tried to dial. Finally, I pressed the right number. David Ramirez, Jennifer's husband. When he picked up, his voice was low, weary, like he'd just stepped out of a long meeting. I tried to keep my voice from cracking, but it came out as a sharp gasp. David, you need to fly to Boston. Jennifer's at Mass General with Gabriel. Silence. So long, I thought he'd dropped the phone. Then he asked, slowly, clearly, as if needing to be sure. There? Where? I swallowed hard. Same emergency room. Accident at the Liberty Hotel. The silence this time was even longer. Finally, David let out a long exhale, like someone who'd just been punched in the gut. I'm on a last-minute business trip, about 2 hours' drive from Boston. Send me the address. I'm coming. No asking if I was sure. No questions about misunderstandings. His voice carried something, like he'd suspected this for a long time, and my call was just the final piece of the puzzle. I closed my eyes for a few seconds before hanging up. Just hearing his voice made everything in the ER feel more real, more painful. As I walked toward the waiting chairs, an image flashed in my mind. My wedding to Gabriel 8 years ago. The sky had been perfect. Jennifer, beaming in a champagne bridesmaid dress. David, Gabriel's best man. I remembered one tiny moment no one else noticed. Gabriel and Jennifer, chatting, laughing too much. A glance that lingered a bit too long. A casual touch on the arm that I told myself was nothing. I saw it all, but a newlywed's heart doesn't want to believe otherwise. They went to college together. I told myself. They get along well. Don't be overly sensitive. If someone had told me then that 8 years later, I'd be standing in a hospital hallway, over 30 weeks pregnant, calling my bridesmaid's husband to tell him his wife was lying next to mine after a hotel accident, I would have laughed, called it the most absurd thing I'd ever heard. But now it was real. A truth tearing me apart, piece by painful piece, beneath the cold, white lights of Mass General. I hadn't even caught my breath when hurried footsteps echoed down the hallway. I turned. David. His shirt wrinkled, like he'd wrestled with it the entire 2-hour drive. The clock on the wall read 9:27 p.m. He didn't hesitate. He marched straight into the ER, pushed aside the curtain. Under the dim lights, when his eyes landed on Gabriel and then Jennifer in the adjacent bed, his face didn't twist with rage like I expected. It went cold. So cold it thickened the air around us. He stood before Jennifer's bed, ignoring Gabriel, who was wincing. He asked in a voice so flat it chilled my bones, "How long?" Jennifer burst into tears immediately. No running, no excuses, no denials. She collapsed to the floor, clutching David's pants like someone drowning. I'm 11 weeks pregnant. It's your baby. I only found out last week. I came to see Gabriel tonight to end our affair. But then the accident happened. Her voice broke apart between sobs. Gabriel lay just steps away, but Jennifer looked only at David, as if he was the last thread keeping her world from falling apart. I stood frozen at the doorway, gripping the railings so tightly my knuckles turned white. I had braced myself for the affair, but I wasn't ready for this. My best friend was pregnant, and the baby, I wasn't even sure whose it was anymore. Her husband's? Or mine? Jennifer kept sobbing, every word slicing into me. I've been on birth control for 7 years straight. I was terrified of getting pregnant, terrified of losing the baby like Laura. I didn't dare tell you. I was afraid you'd be disappointed in me. The ground beneath me shifted. Her words, like Laura, cut deeper than the betrayal itself. My pain, my 2 hospital beds, my arms wrapped around an empty womb, now reduced to a convenient excuse for them to justify their filth behind my back. My body trembled. Rage? Heartbreak? Shame? I didn't know. I only knew I couldn't walk into that moment. I couldn't be a third wheel, listening to 2 betrayers use my suffering to justify their cruelty. David stood still through Jennifer's confession. He didn't pull away. He didn't yell. He just looked at her for a long time, with the eyes of a man watching the marriage he thought was solid crumble to dust. Then he inhaled deeply, his voice still calm, but sharp as a blade. I have one more question. And in that moment, I knew the next thing he asked would drag all of us into an even darker abyss. David bent down and gently lifted Jennifer's chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. It wasn't a harsh grip, not violent, just the action of a man who needed the last truth before watching his marriage fall apart. He asked slowly, clearly, each word slicing through the still air like a scalpel. You loved Gabriel before you married me, didn't you? That question dropped into the ER like a stone into a still lake. Jennifer froze. Her throat twitched. Then she bowed her head, covering her face with both hands, shoulders shaking. Yes, she whispered. Since college. I liked him for a long time, but Gabriel liked Laura, so I kept quiet. I was afraid saying it would mean losing both my best friends. I stood at the doorway, breath stolen from me. From the very beginning of this relationship, I'd been walking beside a woman who loved the same man I did. And I never even knew. David closed his eyes, his fists clenched, but his voice remained terrifyingly calm. And this affair, when did it start? Jennifer's sobs broke into hiccups. Tears fell onto the cold floor. 2 years ago, right after Laura lost her second baby. Gabriel, he got drunk in the garage after the memorial. I found him sitting alone. I only meant to comfort him. But then things went too far. Went too far. That phrase rang in my ears like a blade. I leaned against the wall, gripping the railing again, every muscle in my body tightening. 2 years ago, I was in a hospital bed, having just lost our second child. My belly cramping, my heart torn open. Gabriel said he was going out to get dinner for me. I remember waiting for him for hours. Waiting for cold soup, a whisper apology, a warm hug. But now I knew where he had gone. He was on top of Jennifer while I was losing blood, drowning in the worst pain of my life. My heart pounded, so hard I had to clutch my chest just to stay upright. My body trembled, not sure if from fury or from one more crack splintering my already fractured heart. David looked at me, and in that moment, amid the brutality of those confessions, the antiseptic air and the steady beep of monitors, his eyes were the only thing keeping me from collapsing completely. He nodded slightly, as if telling me he understood why I was trembling like this. Then he said quietly but with steel in his voice, "Calma, thank you for calling me. Protect your child." That sentence in that moment felt both like gratitude and a vow. Something between two people who had been betrayed. Not love, but a recognition of each other's pain. David stood, straightened his wrinkled shirt, and walked out. Pulling out his phone, I heard him speak 3 clear words before the curtain closed behind him. Call family lawyer. And I knew this wasn't just the end of their marriage. The entire world I thought had stood firm for 8 years had just collapsed. When I stepped outside the hospital, the cold Boston night wind whipped against my face, sobering me slightly. But deep inside, a strange new feeling began to rise. I needed to know the whole truth. I no longer trusted anyone's explanations. I returned to our single-family home, the place I once imagined my child growing up in, where Gabriel and I would hang our family photos. Now, the silence inside was so deafening, the sound of the key turning felt like a gunshot. I went straight to Gabriel's home office. His laptop was still on the desk, half closed as usual. I opened it, and just like every other time, he hadn't logged out. My hands trembled, but I clicked into his calendar app. Within 3 seconds, a chill ran down my spine. The Liberty Hotel room booking, repeating like clockwork. The last Friday of every month for 14 straight months. The note stung my eyes. J. Hart's Content Shoot Boston J. I didn't need anyone to explain who that was. I clicked on each entry, each date, each payment. Every line slapped me in the face. If it hadn't been for the accident that night, how many more months would they have gone on? I switched to his work email. Gabriel's inbox was full of financial meetings, stock brokerage contracts. But wedged between them were money transfers, invoices for creative content services, and a string of emails labeled Personal J. My heart pounded. I logged into our joint bank account, the one we'd used to save for our future child for years. In the transfer history, I scrolled down, and I thought my brain might explode. $7,000 a month, consistently 14 times. All sent to Jennifer Ramirez. Notes read, content retainer, media consulting, shoot prep, even one that said support during tough time. None of it was real. But what chilled me the most wasn't the money sent. It was where it came from. I opened the savings section. The balance was lower than I remembered. I scrolled through the transaction history, and there it was, withdrawals that matched every payment to Jennifer. Not just from our spending account. Gabriel had pulled from the college fund we'd built for our child, a fund we started in year 3 of our marriage, after the first miscarriage, hoping one day we'd get another chance at being parents. He had drained the dream of our family to feed a filthy relationship. My chest tightened. If I hadn't grabbed my belly in time, I might have collapsed. But it wasn't over. When I opened the documents folder, I found an influencer contract with Gabriel's brokerage firm logo. I opened it. A media collaboration agreement between Gabriel's company and Jennifer Ramirez. But what made my blood run cold was the signature. Laura Peterson. Not my signature, but so perfect a forgery no outsider could tell. Gabriel had forged my name to secure a contract for Jennifer to legitimize the steady stream of money. A double con, fooling his company and deceiving his wife. I closed the laptop, but my hand wouldn't leave the lid. I looked around the room. Everything in this house had once been a part of the life I tried to build. Our shared desk, our wedding photo, the ultrasound frame from this pregnancy on Gabriel's desk. Now, they were just props in a fake life. I stood up, still shaking, but something had formed inside me. Not pain. Pure clarity. From this moment forward, I was no longer the woman waiting for her husband in a hospital bed. I was the one gathering evidence to protect herself and the child growing inside her. As I sat down on the couch, hands still trembling slightly, I opened Jennifer's TikTok. The space I once thought of as my friend's little pride. She used to show me her brand deals, her travels, her empowering captions about friendship and female strength. But as the screen lit up, those videos now made me nauseous. The support bestie clips, where she hugged me in the hospital, wiped away my tears, added captions like, "Be there for your sister." Now they felt like the weight of a public lie. I replayed a video she posted after my second miscarriage. One where she sat beside me, holding my hand tightly, whispering, "I know what you're going through." I used to be moved watching that, grateful to have a friend by my side in the darkest time. But when I checked the timestamp, I saw the video was taken during the exact 2 hours Gabriel had supposedly gone out to get food. 2 hours I had worried he was stuck in traffic, or perhaps crying alone in grief. I had no idea they were together. They had crossed the line while I was losing our child. The sensation that spread from my chest to my stomach was something I had never felt before. Not just pain, but the complete collapse of every memory I once believed was true. I began taking screenshots of every video, every sympathetic comment like, "Jennifer, you're such a good friend." Every staged moment, she curated to portray herself as the devoted, selfless friend. I saved every hotel check-in she made that just happened to coincide with the same nights Gabriel booked the Liberty Hotel. Each screenshot was a shard of her shattered mask, one that had been broken long ago. Once I had enough, I opened my work email and clicked compose. I typed, subject, regarding your VP, Gabriel Peterson. And for the body, I have documents. We need to talk. I stared at the message, hand trembling, not from fear, but from the clarity of what I was about to do. I knew once this email was sent, Gabriel's life would never go back to the way it was. But I also knew I couldn't act while emotions still stormed inside me. I took a deep breath, looked down at my swelling belly. My son, the only innocent soul in this entire tragedy. I hovered my mouse over send, then moved the message to drafts. Not because I forgave Gabriel, but because every move I made from now on had to be deliberate, measured, never impulsive, so I could protect my child's future the right way. I closed the laptop. The house was so silent, I could hear my own heartbeat. And for the first time in 8 years, I realized I was no longer afraid of the truth. I was ready to face it. And the first way to do so was to leave the house full of fake memories. A week later, when Gabriel was discharged and returned to the three-bedroom home we once chose with a dream of raising our first child here, all that waited for him was absolute silence. I wasn't there, but I could picture every moment he experienced, because everything I left behind was arranged with such precision that no words were needed. When Gabriel opened the door, the afternoon light poured into a bare living room. The sofa was gone. The shared workspace was gone. Every wedding photo on the wall had vanished. All traces of our 8-year marriage were scrubbed clean, as if it had never existed. All that remained was the kitchen table, where I had left the final remnants meant for him. In that cold space, he would have seen the 33-week ultrasound photo of our son, laid neatly like a blade pressed to the heart of a father who had never cherished what he had. Next to it was the divorce agreement, already signed on my part, with a pen beside it, an invitation to sign the truth he created. And there, 2 strips of extended birth control pills Jennifer had once left at my house, now laid on the table like the final proof of betrayal. On top of it all, a handwritten note, in shaky but resolute handwriting. You left me alone for 2 miscarriages. This time, I will give birth, but not with you. I could imagine Gabriel standing there, frozen, hands shaking as he held the note, mouth open but unable to speak. By nightfall, my phone rang endlessly. Gabriel calling nonstop. Every call going straight to voicemail because I had blocked his number since the day I left the hospital. He left dozens of voicemails. Laura, please let me explain.
Where are you?
We need to talk.
I'm sorry.
I'm really sorry. But those words held no value anymore. Before he could even gather himself, an email from HR at his brokerage firm had landed in his inbox. Its message simple but deadly to his career. We need to discuss your Liberty Hotel charges. That alone was enough for me to know his precious title of department head was already in freefall. And just like every other time in our 8-year marriage, Gabriel only realized the worth of what he had when it was already gone. A week later, when Gabriel's calls had become a distant echo I no longer wished to hear, another call came, this one from David. His voice was calmer than the last time we met at the hospital. But there was still a heaviness to every word, like a man who had survived a storm, but still carried its chill. That afternoon, he came to my new apartment in the Seaport district. It was smaller than our old house, but the light streaming through the glass windows felt warmer, more peaceful than any place I'd lived in the past 8 years. I opened the door, and in his hands was a thick envelope. He didn't sit right away. He stood at the dining table, opened the envelope, and poured out neat stacks of $100 bills onto the pale wooden surface. Nearly $100,000, he said, voice raspy but clear. Every cent Gabriel paid Jennifer over the past 14 months. This is guilt money, and it doesn't belong to her or to him. It belongs to your child's future. He said it without trembling, without flinching, like it was the most natural thing in the world for him to do. I stared at the money, the same funds Gabriel had stolen from our child's college savings to support an affair, and felt a slow ache, no longer violent, just deep. David pulled out a chair and sat across from me. His eyes were tired, dark, but completely sincere. He clasped his hands together on the table, like a man preparing himself for something he knew he needed to say. Laura, he inhaled deeply. If you'll allow me, I want to be a father to your son. I've waited 7 years to become a dad. 7 years in a marriage where I thought we'd have a family, have our first child. But all that time, Jennifer never truly wanted to be a mother. I looked at him for a long time. Not because I was surprised, but because for the first time, a man looked at the baby in my womb, not with apathy, not with avoidance, but with something rare, choice. He shared no blood with my child, but he wanted to stand by him, to protect him, to become the father Gabriel never was. I placed my hand on my belly, where Ethan kicked lightly, as if responding. Then I looked up, met David's eyes, and said slowly, Ethan will know you were the first man to choose him. Not out of blood, but out of responsibility. In that moment, inside that new apartment, With the afternoon sun pouring across the floor and the stacks of gilt money lying useless on the table, I realized I was no longer standing alone. And a whole new chapter of my life had just begun. The days that followed moved to a completely different rhythm. I no longer looked at my phone every time it rang. No longer jolted awake at night from echoes of the past. I focused on steady breathing, attending regular checkups, listening to the heartbeat of the baby boy inside me. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was truly preparing to become a mother, no longer shadowed by fear. 5 weeks later, under the warm yellow lights of the delivery room at Brigham and Women's Hospital, I heard my son's first cry. A strong cry, as if he'd fought through 9 long months to reach that very moment. When the nurse placed him on my chest, I didn't cry like other mothers. I felt a deep stillness inside me, a peace I hadn't known in 8 years. I looked at him and whispered, "Welcome to the world, Ethan David Peterson." I gave him the middle name David, not because I loved the man, but because I knew my son deserved to bear the name of someone who had chosen him, even without sharing a single drop of blood. While I held my child, the world outside continued down the path Gabriel and Jennifer had carved. The CEO of Gabriel's firm, a 60-year-old woman who once considered him a rising star, received all the documents I sent. Not the email I had left in drafts, but a complete file I submitted after Ethan was born, when my mind was clear. Her reply was just one sentence. "Thank you. We'll take it from here." And they truly did. Days later, Gabriel was fired quietly, no internal memo, no farewell, all for charging the company for services Jennifer never delivered. His internet account was locked, his office pass disabled, and his reputation in the brokerage world sealed like a closed book. Meanwhile, across the country, Jennifer began her own freefall. The support bestie clips, scenes of her hugging me in the hospital, her vlogs about eternal friendship, were resurfaced and tied to rumors about the Liberty Hotel scandal. She lost her PR deals, all her sponsors, and her followers dropped at a shocking rate. From 270,000, she fell to about 2,000 in less than 2 months. 6 months later, in a small apartment in Detroit, Jennifer gave birth to a baby girl. She named her Lisa Ramirez. I heard about it from David, but not once did I see a post online. No hashtag welcome baby. No my birth story video. No sweet captions, no crib photos, no congratulations. Because no one congratulated her anymore. I was told that when she tried to explain herself online, her video was flooded with hate. People calling her a homewrecker, a traitor, someone who exploited another's pain for TikTok fame. And for the first time, I felt something strange. I didn't feel triumphant. I wasn't glad to see Jennifer fall. I just felt empty. The people who once mattered most to me were now paying their price in their own ways. And me, holding my son in my arms, realized that sometimes life doesn't need you to take revenge. It does the job for you, with the truth they created themselves. I thought everything had hit rock bottom. But a few weeks after Jennifer gave birth, another truth surfaced. This time, not for me but for David. One winter night in Detroit, on the season's first heavy snow, David came home from work, driving back to his quiet house. He said he had just reached for the door handle when he heard a faint noise, like a kitten. He looked down and found an old cardboard box, lightly dusted with snow. He opened the lid, and his heart clenched. Inside was baby Lisa, only 6 weeks old, wrapped in a thin blanket, her tiny hands purple from the cold. Beside her were a few diapers, an unopened bottle, and a crumpled note with shaky writing. "I can't do this. She'll be better with you. Jay." No phone call beforehand. No message. No apology. Just a child abandoned at the doorstep of the one man who had never betrayed her. David immediately called Child Protective Services, reported the situation, and requested to keep the baby for the night. He held Lisa close, pressing her against his chest for warmth, as if even a few more minutes might have sent both of their lives down a different path. The next day, he brought her to the hospital and had a DNA test done, as required by the agency. I still remember the moment he sent me a photo of the result, the emotion in his eyes. I'd never seen anything like it in anyone else. Something painful, freeing, sacred. The document read, Lisa Ramirez, 99.97% biological child of David Ramirez. He held her close, hands trembling slightly, but his gaze firm, and he spoke to her, though she couldn't understand, his voice deep and warm. Your mother may have left you, but your father won't. That line, to me, was more powerful than any speech on fatherhood I've ever heard. Once the DNA results came back, the legal process moved faster than expected. A Michigan family court held an emergency hearing. It was classified as child abandonment. Jennifer didn't show. She cut off all contact, didn't respond to emails, messages, or court letters. In the end, the judge ruled David would have sole custody. No dispute, no appeal, no conditions. A few days later, Jennifer sent in a short, signed document with a shaky signature, a formal surrender of parental rights. Then she vanished from the U.S., like a shadow blown away by wind. Months later, someone from Detroit told me Jennifer had moved to Thailand, teaching English at a soft skills center. No social media, no TikTok, no fame, no child, no past. Only David and Lisa, the only two people who never betrayed each other, starting a family in the quietest but strongest way I've ever witnessed. And then time passed. Detroit's winter gave way to summer. Summer faded into Boston's breezy autumns. I continued raising Ethan with a peace I had never known. David, meanwhile, was building a new life from scratch while learning to be a father. But one day on the phone, he said quietly, like the decision had been brewing for a while, Laura, I think it's time I moved to Boston. A year after Ethan's birth, David did exactly that. Packed everything into a few boxes, drove across 3 states, and rented a small apartment directly across from mine in the Seaport District. His unit was in the exact building across the street, same floor, so close that when I opened my curtains, I could see him holding Lisa in the mornings, making her a bottle or reading to her at night. On their first morning there, I stepped into the hallway with Ethan just as David pushed Lisa's stroller by. 2 little kids, one black-eyed boy who looked like me, one brown-eyed girl who looked exactly like David, saw each other, and as if touched by some quiet magic, both burst into giggles. Ethan pressed his hands against Lisa's stroller, bouncing as if to say hello. Lisa grabbed Ethan's sleeve, her round eyes sparkling. Watching the 2 toddlers stumble down the hallway, laughing like they were meant to find each other, I felt the entire past year collapse into one single moment. A moment where the weight I'd carried for 8 years suddenly felt a little lighter. Then Ethan looked up at David and, in his first babbling attempt, said, Dad. David froze, eyes red for a fleeting second before he bent down, cupped Ethan's cheek, and replied, voice raspy and full of warmth, Dad's here. That was the first time I truly smiled. Not a smile to soothe, not a smile to mask pain, but a real smile of someone who had walked through hell and found the light. After that, we started attending a single-parent support group in Boston. From awkward first meetings to coffees after sessions, to afternoons at Carson Beach Playground with our kids, we slowly became a different version of a family. Not tied by blood, but by choice, responsibility, and kindness. A chosen family. And sometimes, that's the strongest kind of family life can give you. That weekend afternoon, I leaned on the seaport railing as wind from Boston Harbor carried the scent of salt and the golden sunset stretched across the water. Ethan and Lisa ran ahead, tiny footsteps scattering soap bubbles that shimmered in the light, glittering orbs that rose and popped like fragments of painful memories being carried away on the breeze. I opened my phone, scrolled through TikTok without thinking, and saw Jennifer's new video from Thailand. No filter, no makeup, no self-love captions. Just a tired woman's face teaching children to pronounce the word apple. I watched a few seconds. No anger, no pity, not even emotion. Then I closed the app because her life now was no longer my concern. Across the way, David sat on the grass, tying his shoelace while watching the 2 kids chase each other. My heart lightened at the sound of Lisa's laughter. A sound that just a year ago had been so fragile inside a cardboard box on a freezing night. At that moment, a message came from an old friend. Gabriel's back in the financial news. I opened the link. Gabriel appeared beneath the headline. Former brokerage manager involved in Liberty Hotel scandal, under investigation for misuse of corporate funds. The article said he was unemployed, under legal review, and court-ordered to pay child support. I finished reading, locked my phone, and realized I felt nothing. Because everything worth hurting over had already hurt enough. Ethan ran toward me, little arms raised, wanting to be held. I scooped him up, and at the same time, David lifted Lisa onto his hip. The children rested their heads on our shoulders, smelling of sunshine, baby lotion, and the scent of a life completely reborn. I looked at David.
He looked at me.
And neither of us had to say a word. Everything was already understood. I lost a husband and a friend, but I gained 2 children, a worthy father, and a version of myself no longer living in lies. If you've stayed with me until this very moment, thank you for walking beside me through a long story filled with loss, but also full of hope. Have you ever had to completely redefine what family means to you? What did it take for you to find your own peace after heartbreak? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd really love to hear your experiences.